When you think workplace safety, what's the first thing that pops into your head? For most of us, it's probably a hard hat, right? It's kind of the universal symbol for being safe on the job. But what if I told you that putting on that hard hat is actually the last thing you should be thinking about? Yeah, seriously. Let's break down why.
So, we're going to start by looking beyond that hard hat. It's time to rethink what safety really means, moving away from just reacting to danger and getting proactive about preventing it from ever happening in the first place.
Yep, there it is, the good old hard hat. It's the icon, right? The thing we see everywhere that just screams safety. We're totally conditioned to think of it as the be-all and end-all of protection at work.
But here's the thing, and this is the big twist. What if that hard hat is actually the least effective way to keep people safe? It sounds crazy, I know, but there's a much smarter framework out there for stopping accidents before they even have a chance to happen.
Okay, so what is this smarter way? Well, it's called the hierarchy of controls, and you can think of it like a safety pyramid. It's a really powerful framework that totally flips the script on how we should approach safety. Let's get right into it.
So what is this thing exactly? The hierarchy of controls is basically a system, and it's a big deal recognized by major safety organizations like NIOSH and OSHA that rank safety measures from most effective to least effective. And the whole goal is super simple. Deal with the hazard at its source, get rid of the problem itself, rather than just trying to shield the worker from it.
Imagine an upside-down pyramid. It's broken down into 5 levels. At the very top, the widest part, you've got the most effective method, elimination. And as you go down, the methods get less and less effective, all the way to the very bottom, the smallest point, which is personal protective equipment, or PPE.
All right, let's explore these 5 levels. We're going to walk through each one, from the top to the bottom, from most effective to least effective. And we're starting right at the top, where we can make the biggest possible impact.
First up, at the very peak of our pyramid, we have the gold standard of safety, elimination.
And this is exactly what it sounds like. It's so straightforward. You don't just manage the risk, you physically remove the hazard entirely. It's gone. Poof. So the risk drops to 0. This is hands down the most effective solution because it doesn't rely on anyone having to remember a rule or wear the right gear. The danger just isn't there anymore.
So what does that actually look like in the real world? Well, instead of having people work way up high on scaffolding, maybe you can assemble the components on the ground first. Or instead of dealing with a really toxic chemical, you re-engineer the whole process so you just don't need it anymore. You are literally designing the danger right out of the job from the get-go.
Okay, so what if you can't just get rid of the hazard completely? Well, if you can't eliminate it, the next best thing you can do is substitution.
The whole idea here is pretty simple. You swap out something dangerous for something that's safer. You can still get the job done, but you've seriously lowered the potential for anyone to get hurt.
For instance, think about switching from those harsh, solvent-based paints to much safer, water-based ones. Or maybe replacing a piece of equipment that's deafeningly loud with a newer, quieter model. See? You're not getting rid of the task itself, you're just getting rid of the really high level of risk that came with it.
All right, let's move down to the middle of the pyramid. This brings us to our 3rd level, engineering controls.
Now, this is where the focus really starts to shift. With engineering controls, the hazard is still there, but you're creating a physical separation between people and the danger. And this is the key. You're changing the work environment, not trying to change the worker's behavior.
This includes things you've probably seen, like putting guards on machinery so no one can accidentally stick a hand in, or using things like fume hoods to literally suck contaminated air away from workers. Even building enclosures around noisy equipment fits here. These are all physical changes that create a reliable, consistent barrier of protection.
Okay, next up, we're moving down another level to what's called administrative controls. And this is where we really start to rely a lot more on people following rules and processes.
So, the crucial point here is that we are now changing how people work. We're not touching the hazard itself. This is all about policies, training, schedules, basically the rules of the job that are designed to limit exposure.
So for example, you might have job rotation, where you move people around so no single person is exposed to a repetitive strain or a chemical for too long. Or you might create really specific safe work procedures and plaster warning signs everywhere. Now these controls can be effective, but, and this is a big but, they depend entirely on everyone following the rules perfectly, every single time.
And that brings us all the way down to the very bottom of our pyramid, the last line of defense, personal protective equipment, or, as we all know it, PPE.
Here's the thing about PPE. It doesn't reduce or eliminate the hazard at all. Not one bit. All it does is try to create a final barrier between that hazard and the worker. And if that barrier fails, if the glove rips or the hard hat cracks, the worker is completely exposed.
This is where we find all the familiar stuff: respirators, gloves, safety glasses, and yes, our old friend, the hard hat. They are absolutely essential when the other controls up the pyramid just aren't enough. But what the hierarchy teaches us is that they should never, ever be the only solution, and they definitely shouldn't be the first thing we reach for.
Okay, so now we know the 5 levels. But how do you actually take this and apply it in the real world? How do you make it a strategic approach?
It's really a 3-step strategy. First, and this is the most important part, you always start at the top of the pyramid. Before you even think about ordering new gloves or hard hats, you have to ask, can we just eliminate this hazard completely? Second, you got to involve your team. The people actually doing the work, they have priceless insights into what's really going on. And third, you layer your controls. The best, most robust safety plans almost always use a combination of these different levels.
And that point about teamwork, it's absolutely non-negotiable. I mean, think about it. When your employees are part of the process of finding solutions, you end up with practical fixes that actually work on the floor, not just stuff that looks good on paper.
You know, when you really boil it down, this isn't just a safety model. It's a fundamental shift in how you think. It's all about moving from a reactive mindset to a prevention mindset.
And the difference between those two mindsets is like night and day. The old reactive way, it focuses on PPE. It's a last resort. And honestly, it often ends up blaming the worker when something goes wrong. But the prevention mindset, the one guided by this hierarchy, it focuses on the source of the hazard. It's about fixing the system, not the person. It's about making safety the very first thought, not just an afterthought.
So I'm going to leave you with a challenge. The next time you're at your workplace, I want you to look past the usual safety gear. Don't just ask, how do we protect people from this hazard? Instead, ask a better question. What hazard around here can we eliminate entirely? Because that right there is where real safety begins.